So, Jewish West meets Judaic East in Memel's Inclusive Topography is my title, and I'm hoping to take a look at the German Jewish culture from Berlin and its transference to the small town of Memel on the Baltic. And then we have the movement of Yiddish culture from Kaunas, Lithuania, into Memel as well. And shortly after Dr. Isaac Rolf was succeeded by Emanuel Karlebach as rabbi in Memel, the retiree Dr. Rolf compiled a history of the Jewish community. And in it, he said that, quote, Memel is not one of the places of whose congregation we are accustomed to label as a mother city in Israel. And Memel then is a tiny place, much smaller than the communities that we've heard about already, for example, in Erfurt or Berlin, and therefore will have a slightly different perspective. So, these are the points that I'd like to quickly take a look at this morning in my allotted time. We'll start with the Verein für Jüdische Geschichte und Literatur. From there, we will move to Zionism, then the use of the Schützenhaus for German Jewish space, then Yiddish space, and then the odd phenomena that often the Jewish audiences in the Schützenhaus were larger than the hosts, meaning the shooting club's own membership. Then we'll talk about how there were Jewish places that were not used as Jewish spaces. And what I mean there basically is educational facilities that were not used for these various Jewish associations. Then we'll take a look at the contentious debate on Jewish economic spaces, meaning the role of Jewish businesses or Jewish-owned businesses in this small town of Memel. And then I'm wondering if we are noticing a religious, or rather a trend in the chronology where religious places, as we approach the 1930s, are becoming used as secular spaces. And we'll just simply conclude that after the Shoah, the Jewish hospital becomes a Lithuanian clinic. So, would like to then talk about a first Jewish space, which is the Verein. And the Verein was started much earlier by Gustav Karpeles in January of 1892 in Berlin. And Karpeles held that a renewal of Judaism was more likely to occur through his literary society than the synagogue. And therefore he recruited traveling lecturers to present both popular and academic speeches. And his main representative in Memel is Leon R.A. Scheinhaus. And Scheinhaus needed to overcome three obstacles in the Jewish space of Memel to, the Jewish place of Memel to create a Jewish space. And he discerned that Memel citizens held that it was unthinkable to conclude a Jewish lecture in public, as well as advertising the event in a newspaper. So here you can see an advertisement in the Memel Dampfboot for October of 1921 for a speech given by the librarian Dr. Heinrich Loewe from Berlin. And one of the interesting points here for me to bring out is that Dr. Loewe then is going to cross the ideological chasm from the association, from the Verein to Zionism. So that's going to be a bit unusual here, or unusual in Judaism, I should say. So we can see from the previous slide on Dr. Loewe that he was speaking on the language of the Jews. And prior to this 1921 lecture, Dr. Loewe had published a book on this theme. So I'm hoping that you can see in this slide, and let me try to indicate way up here, I've got a little red arrow, and this red arrow is showing that this street is the Schützenstraße, meaning the location of where the hunting club or shooting club's clubhouse is. And of course, here it is. Later on in the lecture, we're going to be talking about the Jewish buildings down here. And by Jewish buildings, I'm talking about the edifice of the synagogue, of the Jewish school, and the Jewish hospital. So that's the direction that our slideshow is happening. And this then shows the owners of the building, the hunting club or shooting club. And as I traveled to Memel, I photographed the hunting club's building. And I'd like to point out about this Schützenhaus that the Goethebund was customarily meeting in the auditorium of the Old Cities High School, although on the occasion of Walter von Molo having come and spoken for the Goethebund, he used the auditorium in this big Schützenhaus building. And you'll forgive me, this was my family's home, so I just had to get the family in here as well. So the Verein, our first Jewish organization that we're taking a look at, utilized a variety of venues. They met in the high school, the public high school that is, as well as Fischer's Weinstube, which for our English speakers, of course, means a wine bar, and then the large hall of the Victoria Hotel. Let's see. So the two largest Jewish organizations in the city of Memel then once again are the Verein and the Zionists, and both clubs went ahead and used both the Fischer's Wine Bar and the main auditorium in the Victoria Hotel. But when the occasion arose for the Zionists to have a very big fundraising event for Israel, they held it in the main hall of the Schützen or Hunters Club. And I checked the various newspapers, and that was true not only in 1921, but 1922 as well. Now, I want to make a distinction between the Verein and the Zionists and a third Jewish organization, which is the Erste Jüdischen Volkstheater, and that is being started by Nachum Lipovsky. And what Lipovsky had done was go to the Kaunas City Theater and recruited various Jewish actors to perform in Yiddish And these plays were conducted first in Kaunas, and then they crossed the border into Eastern Prussia and performed them for the people of Memel as well. What we see over time is that the number of performances by Lepovsky's theater group from Kaunas are going to greatly increase and span a 5-week period of time. Let's see, I'd like to move ahead then, because what we see is that though the Schützenhaus was the main center for the Yiddish dance group, there were certainly other buildings owned by Jewish organizations that could have been used but were not. And that's where I'm coming up with the title here, that some religious spaces are not being used for these public events. And here what we're seeing is we have the synagogue, we have the prayer hall, which of course are supported by the synagogue, but they're not used. And another picture that I took, this is the back and the side of the Jewish high school, the gymnasium. And the front of this building is very well decorated, but you can see that through the Shoah and afterwards, the building was transformed by the Soviets. And perhaps you can see this strange contraption at the side of the current building indicates that the Soviets went ahead and constructed an elevator to be able to haul grain up to the top floor here and store grain, use it as a warehouse when it had been a very fancy looking Jewish high school, gymnasium. Okay, let's see. Then what I'd like to take a look at is the concept of Jewish businesses. And for those who have done work with Jewish economic issues, that is a very contentious issue. And so in my dissertation, which has already been published by Lexington Books in Maryland, I called it Jewish-owned businesses to try to overcome that issue. And what we're seeing here is back in 1921, all of these major German Jewish businesses in Memel are being closed for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and therefore it's identifying that business as being a Jewish business. Okay, before I run out of time, let me go ahead then and simply say, of course, that you've got the synagogue advertising in the newspaper, so Jewish space has been created, and then we have strange juxtapositions in the newspaper, because here what we have on the left is an advertisement letting the practicing Jews of Memel know when the Sabbath begins and ends, and yet way over here, these are practically adjacent ads. You can see one ad comes between the two different types of ads in the middle of the newspaper here. So this is not as though I just pasted these ads together. This is how they originally appeared in 1921, with something for observant Jews over here, and then something over here from the Verein talking about Jewish literature. We see the same kind of thing, maybe even more extreme. Again, 3 adjacent advertisements in the newspaper where, of course, the 2 top advertisements are talking about kosher for Passover, but down here we're talking about the Protestant or Lutheran community of Memel, talking about confirmation presents, and those ads are immediately adjacent. Then I'm asking the question at the end of my lecture, is there a more political tone being enunciated from the synagogue? And the missing piece of information that you need to know is that the synagogue, which of course was destroyed in Kristallnacht, was on Kehrwiederstraße 4. Return Street, number 4. And I searched for that building, could not find any shred for its existence. And yet the tone of the meeting seems to be a very political tone in the synagogue to be discussed. And then my last slide for this morning is looking at the Jewish-owned hospital in Memel and how it's being used after the war. So perhaps you could see that as I visited the building, way over here is a rubble pile of building material, old bricks and stones and plaster. And then perhaps over here on both sides of the portal, you can see where the signs announcing that in the 1920s, this was the Jewish hospital have been torn out of the wall. And the other side of this remarkable facade is where the new entrance of the building is now located, because what used to be the Jewish hospital in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s is now a Lithuanian clinic, and they use the other side of the building as the main entrance. So that is the slide presentation that I wanted to bring, and I return the computer monitor to the host.